As Ontarians prepare to head to the polls 1 year early, Ontario's opposition parties say Doug Ford already has a strong mandate and should hold off. Now, here to discuss this and so much more, Liberal Leader Bonnie Crombie joining us live this morning. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Caryn. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. So this election is coming when Liberal resources are really focused on the federal Liberal leadership race at a time when federal and provincial Liberals are really going to be competing for money, for candidates, for volunteers. Are you ready to go this Wednesday?
Well, that's a complex question, but yes, we are ready to go. And yes, there's a lot of excitement about being a Liberal right now, whether provincially or even federally, as the federal counterparts are in a leadership race. But at the same time, what I've seen is a lot of interest being generated by this early and unnecessary election call, and a lot of volunteers have made their way to us. So I'm kind of excited, but let me say that I want to remind people that we aren't scheduled to go to the polls until June of 2026. So this is an unnecessary election. It's going to cost voters $175 million, and I believe it's rather reckless behavior on the part of the Premier when he really needs to be focused on preparing us for the issues at hand, the tariff threat that the incoming President Donald Trump is posing.
Now, while you point out that Ford technically has a mandate for another year, Donald Trump has a mandate for 4. And to Ford's point, he's saying, you know, Ontario needs a leader who can go to the Trump administration and say, no matter what's happening in Ottawa, you're going to be dealing with me for the next 4 years. Does he not have a point there?
Absolutely not. Politicians always have 4-year terms. He has another 17 months until we go to the polls. There will be a new crisis by then, and by then we will all be going to the polls as we should be. You know, Doug Ford didn't ask for a new mandate when he spent billions of dollars in COVID. He didn't ask for a mandate, when he spent $2 billion, when he gave it to Therma, that foreign spa at Ontario Place, or when he expedited the sale of beer and wine to corner stores. He spent $1 billion. And by the way, the FAO, the Financial Accountability Officer, will be releasing a report on that today. And we think it may have cost more than $1 billion. And he certainly didn't ask for a mandate to send out $3 billion worth of pre-election checks to voters. So he has a very strong mandate. He will govern until June 2026, as he should. But, you know, Doug Ford needed to have prepared us for this oncoming threat of tariffs, and he hasn't done that. He hasn't strengthened our economy. Unemployment rate is higher than it's ever been in a decade. The debt and the deficit are out of control. We have 2 million people using food banks, and over 2.5 million people don't have access to a family doctor. Our education system, our healthcare system are all crumbling. And he would rather put a label on a hat and slap on a cape and pretend he's Captain Canada. The reality is the federal government will be responding to the crisis that is happening south of the border.
While I do take your point, all the shortcomings, if you'll call them, that you've just described, and also the fact that Canadians look to the federal government for, trade challenges, the fact is that the U.S. is Ontario's most important trading partner, and the dire prediction is that if these tariffs are implemented, there are 500,000 Ontarians at risk of losing their jobs.
Yes.
So as Premier, what would you do to protect those jobs?
Absolutely. What hasn't been done before. What we see is jobs leaving this province. 36,000 construction jobs because Doug Ford hasn't figured out how to build housing. There's a housing report out today by Build that says this has been the worst year on record, in fact. Manufacturing jobs have also left our province. What he should have been done is prepare us, invest in the economy, invest in job creation,
but you don't
and
see
build
value
relationships.
in him building relationships across the border and what he has done?
I'm sorry. He hasn't been building those relationships until now. What are the relationships he's established with those 17 states that are our top trading partners? I ask you, if this is the right time to go to an election, and I argue that this is reckless behavior, because we need calm, we need certainty, and we need stability. When you look across the country, is there one other Premier threatening an election call during this chaos? This Premier's attempt at solving chaos by creating more chaos, more uncertainty, more instability at a cost of $175 million to our voters.
I do need to wrap, but very quickly, I was wondering if you could share what Mississauga riding you might be running in.
Yes, that will be announced when the election is dropped, presumably on Wednesday. It's part of our suspense and hype and part of the kickoff.
So stay tuned for later this week. Liberal Leader Bonnie Crombie, really appreciate you being here this morning. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Caryn.